You know that feeling when you've been working incredibly hard in the gym or out on the track, pushing your absolute limits day after day, and then you just hit a wall. You're putting in all this effort, but the progress completely stalls out, or worse, you end up injured. Well, welcome to today's explainer, where we're going to fix exactly that. We are diving deep into training periodization, basically the ultimate scientific approach to structuring your workouts.
So let's get right to it. Why does going hard all the time sometimes just lead to injury or a total plateau? It actually all comes down to something called the general adaptation syndrome. This was formulated by Hans Selye. Basically, if you throw unmanaged, monotonous physical stress at your body, you push it right past its natural resistance phase and straight into this really dangerous exhaustion phase. Your body doesn't get stronger at that point, it literally just breaks down.
The whole trick is finding a way to stay out of that exhaustion zone, and that is exactly where periodization comes into play. By definition, this is the cyclical, scientific manipulation of training variables, things like your volume and your intensity. Think of it like a strategic architectural blueprint for building athletic performance. Instead of just relying on gut feeling or walking into the gym and guessing what to do, you're following a master plan to manage fatigue and keep overtraining at bay. Here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we'll hit the core benefits of periodization. Second, traditional and undulating models. Third, we'll look at block and tactical models. And finally, some practical examples of periodization in action.
Okay, starting with Section 1, the core benefits of periodization. Let's see what a structured blueprint actually does for you.
Periodization basically acts as a protective shield and a targeted weapon all at once. It keeps you safely locked in that resistance phase we just talked about, which obviously avoids overtraining and minimizes your injury risk. But it also drives what sports scientists call teleonomy. Fancy word, I know, but it really just means purposeful, directed biological adaptations. It stops you from getting bored, zeroes in on your specific weak links, and most importantly, it guarantees you hit absolute peak performance exactly when your target competition happens, not 2 weeks early or a month too late.
And you have to remember, an athlete's preparedness isn't just one isolated thing. It's this highly complex optimization of 5 intersecting biomotor abilities: strength, endurance, speed, flexibility, and coordination. Periodization is the exact tool we use to balance and target all of these areas at precisely the right moments.
But to pull that off, we need serious structure. Enter the periodization hierarchy. Let's actually ditch the academic jargon for a second and use a construction metaphor. Your macro cycle is the entire annual plan, the overall blueprint for the skyscraper you're trying to build. The mesocycle is usually around a month long, so think of that as constructing a specific floor of that skyscraper. And the microcycle? That's your weekly training block, or basically your day-to-day bricklaying.
Moving right along to Section 2, traditional and undulating models. Because, different goals require different blueprints. The rule for the traditional or linear model is actually really straightforward. You kick off your training cycle with very high volume and very low intensity to build up this massive base. Then, as your competition gets closer, you gradually flip those variables. The volume drops way down, and the intensity absolutely skyrockets. This specific model is a fantastic foundation if you're a beginner, an endurance athlete, or if you're in the early phases of rehab. But what if you're a highly advanced athlete? That is where we have to compare linear with undulating periodization. While the linear model is this steady, predictable climb over several months, the undulating model mixes things up constantly. We're talking changes in volume and intensity weekly, sometimes even daily. Why do we do this? Because the nervous systems of elite athletes adapt incredibly fast. If the stimulus is too monotonous, they just plateau. Undulating keeps the body guessing and constantly fires up those high-threshold motor units.
All right, jumping into Section 3, block and tactical models. These are designed for the grueling schedules of modern sports.
Let's talk about Vladimir Isurin's block periodization, widely known as the ATR model. Imagine you're an elite athlete and you have to peak multiple times a year. You definitely don't have the luxury of a slow 12-month linear buildup. Instead, you use these uninterrupted 2 to 8 week blocks that focus intensely on just 1 or 2 compatible qualities. First up is accumulation, where you build base strength and aerobic capacity. Second is transmutation, where you actually convert that base into sport-specific power. And third is realization. That's your taper phase, to shed all that fatigue and peak for game day.
And then there's tactical periodization, which was heavily popularized in professional soccer by Vito Frade. The big takeaway here is the concept of unbreakable wholeness. In team sports, you don't just send players out to run mindless laps to build endurance. Instead, every single physical adaptation is built organically through specific tactical drills on the pitch. The coach's tactical game model is what actually drives the physical loading. It is an incredibly holistic, smart way to train a team without completely burning them out. Let's bring all this theory to life. Section 4. Practical examples of periodization.
So check out the traditional linear model in action for a 1,500-meter runner. Notice how these numbers flip over the 24 weeks. In the general prep phase, weeks 1 through 8, the runner is logging a massive 80 to 100 kilometers a week, but keeping the intensity super low, right around 60 to 70% of their max heart rate. Now follow that all the way down to the peaking phase right before the race. The volume is plummeted to just 25 to 35 kilometers, but the intensity is an explosive 90 to 100%. They built the base, and now they are realizing the speed.
Now, how would a CrossFit athlete use that ATR block model we discussed? Since CrossFit demands literally everything all at once, they rely on this biological cheat code called residual training effects. It's crazy, but the maximum strength you build in that week 1 accumulation phase actually hangs around in your body for roughly 30 days. So you can build that strength, leave it alone to focus entirely on power during the transmutation phase in weeks 5 to 7, and those strength gains will still be sitting right there in your muscles on competition day in week 8. It's incredibly strategic.
And what about tactical periodization for a pro soccer team? These teams are playing high-stakes matches every single Sunday, so they absolutely cannot afford heavy, exhausting gym sessions midweek. Instead, they run a weekly pattern morpho cycle. They rely on microdoses, literally just 10 to 20 short minutes of targeted physical loading, and they wrap that entirely within tactical passing or defending drills on the field. It lets them maintain high performance week after week without ever hitting that dreaded overtraining exhaustion phase.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want you to remember one golden rule from sports science literature. There is no single best model out there. Strictly speaking, there isn't even linear or undulatory periodization. It's really all just about the methodology of loading. The absolute right model is simply the one that is uniquely tailored to your specific sport, your competition calendar, and your individual physiology.
So the final question I'm going to leave you with today: which architectural blueprint are you going to use to design your next training macro cycle? Whether you go linear for a marathon or block for a weightlifting meet, the absolute key is having a plan. Stop guessing, stay far away from that exhaustion plateau, and start engineering your own peak performance. Thanks for hanging out and learning with me today, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.